Here we are into Thursday morning. Good morning and welcome to Light the Tower. On the Horn, 1049, 1019, AM 1260. We're live, local, and digital on the Horn app and at hornfm.com. My name is Craig Way. I thank you so much for joining us. Jeff Howe out again today. He'll be back tomorrow. This, it didn't sink in until yesterday. A lot has sunk in, by the way, over the past, what's happened over the past month or so. But this really didn't sink in until yesterday because I had to be reminded of the deal. Will be the final show on this station and on these airwaves that Cameron Parker will produce for us because he had already had scheduled vacation to take off. Just the vacation becomes a little more extended for you now. How you doing this morning?
Yeah, just a little bit. I'm doing good, Craig. Kind of wasn't thinking about it like that until you just mentioned it.
Yeah,
so,
me too. I was the same way, and I was like, whoa, okay, this is it.
It's weird, the process. It's been the last 2 years have just completely flown by, Craig. I basically have worked with you from the start. Behind the scenes, producing UT football, basketball, baseball, and then, of course, the coaches show at Pluckers. So you haven't got rid of me yet, Craig.
No, and not planning to, just to let folks know that Cam will also continue to assist us in our network broadcast of Longhorn Athletics coming up. So we're looking forward to that. So it's not, for us, it's not goodbye, just, a temporary so long for that sort of thing. So that's good. So that's why it's not quite as shattering as it might otherwise be. So that is good. Were you watching Rangers Astros last night? Were you watching Women's World Cup? What was your deal on that?
So I'm kind of weird in the way where if my team continues to lose, I think I'm the jinx. So Rangers lost the first two games to the Astros. So I was like, all right, I'm going to pack for my upcoming trip.
Yeah. Right.
And I'll just, monitor Twitter. I'll watch through Twitter.
Okay.
So we were down 3-0 early. It was like, great. We're going to be swept. We're going to be tied in the AL West now. And then all of a sudden, I just start seeing my phone blow up with tweets about Adolis Garcia and Martin Maldonado.
Yeah.
I got it, and it says Rangers have scored 12 of the last 13 runs with 2 outs. Oh, that must be good.
How about that?
Enjoyed watching the highlights. Enjoyed drinking the Astro fans' tears after Garcia's grand slam. Marcus Semien had that 2-run shot. So I'm glad. Now, the last 2 series, after winning 6 straight, we lost 2 of the 3 to the Dodgers, of course, Craig, and we lost 2 of the 3 to the Astros. So after a great start, kind of coming back down to earth, but a really tough opening slate to start the second half of the season.
Okay. All right. Spoken like a true Rangers fan, and things have gotten a little bit salty and did last night.
That's good.
Yeah.
That's good. The Rangers have been so bad the last 7 years, nothing gets salty about. You can't get mad when you lose by the Astros. It was like, yeah, well.
It's competitive. It's definitely competitive. No doubt about that. So you didn't catch any of the World Cup?
I watched the second half of the U.S. Netherlands game. So I saw U.S. equalize and the 45 shots they had on goal in the last 10 minutes that somehow none went in.
Unbelievable. It completely dominated the second half, but it could only get the one goal in the second half to equalize it, and they won it. But, that it was important not to drop the match. They're in great position to advance to the knockout stage. So get that one out of the way. Our Specs text line open at 337-3776, 512-337-3776, and thank you to the Colonel. The Colonel, retired. Craig Flowers used to seat up in solid plank for the opener. Hey, we're trying to do that all down the stretch for you, Colonel, here. So I've got, we have 3 more openers, 3 more planks for you there. Tomorrow, Monday, and Tuesday, we'll do that. Happy Jack Farrell will be at the switch tomorrow, and then Monday and Tuesday, right?
I believe so.
Yeah. Okay. So he'll be on that. All right. Let me tell you what's coming up. Here in a few minutes, David Pierce, head baseball coach at the University of Texas, will join us. It'll be our first conversation that we've had since the end of the season. And then with following up, I wanted to visit with him after everything was buttoned up with regard to the Major League Baseball draft, and everyone who was going to sign a professional contract and leave had done so. It just wound up, a couple of days ago with the final, you might say, point being or box being checked off the list, and then also to visit with him about the changes and adjustments he's made with his coaching staff. So we'll visit with him about that. That'll be coming up, and that'll be an early edition of our Longhorn Notebook. That's coming up here in just a few minutes, so we'll visit with him. We'll have Inconceivable. There's a type of story, Cam, that would normally fit in Friday, and we know what Friday means with Inconceivable, right?
Of course, got to reach for that low-hanging fruit.
There, yeah, for the most flaccid of the 48, Florida. This is not a Florida story, but it's when you hear it, it will just scream Florida to you. So I figured I had to have something like that since it'll be the last Inconceivable that you are on the button pushing side of that. So we'll and then there's a couple other topics as well. In fact, I got an assist from the missus on one of these stories. It's kind of weird and kind of creepy a little bit, and she gets the assist on that. Then in the 11 o'clock hour, Keith Moreland joins us here in studio. And, of course, Keith does a fabulous job on Longhorn Network with Longhorn Baseball on the home telecast, and then, of course, joins us frequently on the road for joining me on the road with Longhorn Baseball on the radio broadcast. And then, in addition to that, works as an analyst on the ESPN Plus telecast for Texas State football. Working that with Brant Freeman. So, and other sort of, he's got the Little League World Series, the regionals in Waco coming up.
Ooh.
So he does that every year. So we'll visit with Keith, and we'll talk some Longhorn baseball, and we'll talk Major League Baseball. After all, he was in the bigs for more than a dozen years. So we'll visit with him about that and do some reminiscing, as we've done during these last few shows that we've had, which, by the way, I've had described to me in various terms. Final Chapter, Last Dance, Green Mile. lots of different ways to describe these final shows that we have today, and then 3 more afterwards, and that's cool. That's fine. And then it'll be time to for those of us who, and it's the vast majority of us, who won't be staying, to move on to the next professional as well as personal chapter of our lives. So we'll do that. But there will, there are some things that will continue on, obviously, like me broadcasting the Texas game. So we'll do that.
Do you know how many radio shows you've worked on in your career? Do you know the number? You
mean just like regular, daily show like this?
Yeah.
It would be in the thousands. I mean, I've had, with the exception of the 3-year break from February 17 to February of 2017 to March 2020, 3 years. With the exception of that 3-year break, I've been on the air doing a daily show for more than 30 years. There was also a 9-month break when I left KRLD in November of '96 before coming down here, because I was working in television doing the Rangers television show as well as the high school shows, and was still working the Longhorn radio broadcasts, but was not doing a regular daily conversational sports talk show during that 9-month break. So other than the 9 months and the 3 months, the 9 months and the 3 years. So if close to maybe 4 years. Other than that, it's been more than 30 years. So that would be number in the thousands.
Jeez.
So yeah, it just means it's been around for a while. So anyway, so that's what the situation is there, and so it's been around a long It's like, and the fun thing about this is the enjoyment of the enjoyment of just interacting, not only obviously with you, but also with the guests, with other co-hosts, that sort of thing. Just having the opportunity to do that. That I think is as important as anything else. See, we always hear the relationships, how important those are, and they are, and getting to know the people that I've known over the time has meant an awful lot. Our Specs text line is open. We will, by the way, give away another copy of Dave Campbell's Texas Football Magazine. We'll do that, and that'll be the different call-in line, not the text line. Victor asked me, do you think you'll call any regular season high school football games, or is it going to be in the state playoffs? As far as I know, I'm definitely doing the state championships. So, I had one conversation when I was down at coaching school, so I know I'm doing those again. We'll see about the other things. And we'll get to more of your text in a moment. But right now, it's time for an early edition, you might say, early in the first hour edition of The Notebook. So we move forward with that. And joining us on the Vaqueros Cafe and Cantina Hotline, the head coach of Texas Longhorn Baseball, David Pierce, joins us now. I appreciate the time, and people were asking me about breaks and vacation. I know you've had precious little opportunity even to catch your breath, but how are you doing here? Come on the tail end of July.
Yeah, we're doing well. Craig, thanks for having me. You look up and you finish a season in kind of a gut-wrenching way of finishing, but you look up and everybody comes back to you and so I hope you enjoy your summer, have a great summer, get some downtime. And it's kind of crazy because it's the opposite. You just switch gears and you go into recruiting. Recruiting now is, preserving the guys that you've already committed. Also, this thing called the transfer portal now is pretty busy.
Yeah.
And so you mix all that in with kind of cultivating relationships with donors to really help increase our NIL position. And it's just very active in a lot of different directions. When you're in season, you got a little more tunnel vision and you're one direction all the time. And now you just kind of bounce from different things and add camp in there. So there's a lot of activity going on, and it's just what it is. And so we start slowing down a little bit in August to get a little time off before we bring the new crop in.
Would you say? Well, I guess I know the answer is yes, but how much more time now has to be devoted to visiting with, networking with, and educating the donors on this whole NIL process and how they can really help the program and how the whole thing works? Would you say it's a significant amount more time than it used to be for you and the staff in visiting with those who are interested in helping out in the whole NIL process as donors?
Much more significant. And it's because we're in such an infancy stage of understanding it. And our goal through Texas One Fund is really to be very sustainable. And are we a program? Are we a university that's going to really commit to it and do it the right way? I say yes. And so that takes time, getting things in place. But at the same time, we're pretty committed to doing it the right way and really having it to have a longevity about it versus just trying to go after one or two guys and throw a lot of money. Our goal is to, have a team salary, have enough for our entire roster plus, when we have to go above that. So there's a lot of things that, that are out of my control. But my goal is to really educate the donors. And another piece that we used to never deal with is advisors. So we spend more time speaking to advisors about, I guess you call it, their client than ever before. And so that's a new piece as well. So, You just have to be adaptable, and I'm very adaptable towards doing what's best for Texas baseball and making it happen.
Yeah, no doubt about it. David Pierce, Longhorns head baseball coach, joining us here on Light the Tower on the Horn. There obviously were several reasons I wanted to have you join us. That was one of them, to talk about the things of that nature. Let me move to your roster management, because the way the things went with the Major League Baseball draft, did anything ultimately surprise you with who was drafted and or where they might have been drafted, and with regard to the signing? I know you're really kept in tune with the players. I remember vividly on the flight home after the final heartbreaking loss at Stanford, when we were all flying home. I knew you were still doing your duties as a head coach. I remember seeing you walk back a few rows behind me and sit down with a couple of different players at different points and ask them what their thoughts were with the draft coming up. So you'd already started to work that, no question about it. But how about your impressions of what you saw, where your guys were drafted, and those who chose to sign and those who chose to return?
Yeah, so we started our exit meetings right on the plane coming back home from Palo Alto, because I like to spend a little time with our players then and just kind of get their thoughts from the season, what they really enjoyed, what they feel like we could do better. And it's usually those older kids that are in that draft eligible position. And so I tried to knock out a lot of those guys on the plane. And then when you look at the way this thing has kind of evolved, it used to be, you continue your recruiting, and that's kind of setting your next couple of years up, and then taking care of your kids that are incoming and just kind of paying attention how their summers are going. And then you start all the prep for them coming into the University of Texas and housing and making sure that they're under compliance and their academics are set up. So now you add the portal, and immediately, there's thousands of kids in there. So you have to be very selective, very cautious. So we added some really good pieces. So when you look at adding some of those pieces, you also have to hold your breath whether or not they're going to sign. So we go through this process of 4 to 6 guys that we added to our program, and then you get into the draft. And so if you project X amount of guys that are going to get drafted and signed, then you look up and you're kind of in the exact numbers where you want to be. And then there's a second wave after the draft of the portal, where guys didn't get drafted. Now they're looking for a home. It's just very interesting and really drawn out. And so we did well in the front end with our transfers. We're still involved and interested in a couple other guys. And then we did really well with the draft. When you look at, Tanner, LBJ, and people go, well, they didn't even get drafted. Tanner got drafted late, but it's pretty smart on their part, because they basically say, we're going to set a high number. And if they meet that number, we're going to sign. If they don't meet the number, we want to go back to school and we want to go try to compete for a national championship. And that's really awesome when kids really recognize their abilities and investing in themselves moving forward. So we did well with those two. And then you throw Charlie Hurley in there. I had 5 guys, those 3 plus Lucas Gordon and Travis Staley. I figured if we get 1, that's good. If we get 2 back, that's great. Now we got 3. So that's outstanding to get, with LBJ Hurley back. And then you throw in a Porter Brown that I'm still a little confused with how he didn't get at least a free agency. But, the metrics and what they look at and what they can afford don't always match up. So we're fortunate to get Porter back, and then you throw a couple of transfer portal guys that, the Will Rigney kid from Baylor, I think is going to be outstanding for us. And then you look at, a couple other kids. So, and a couple of freshmen. We ended up keeping Will Gasparino and Hayden Morse. And the only one we really lost was Travis Sikora, but they met his number, and he had a very high number. So it's just very intriguing, but it's kind of like dealing with the stock market. It changes every day, and it can change within hours. And it's almost like watching a ticker board, and every day you get 5 new names. And so you research and go, All right, does that kid fit in? Do we have room for that? Is that a need? So it's constant all the way up until we get our roster set in probably the first week of August.
Yeah, and you kind of answered the question. I think I was about to ask you, is there one guy who is coming back who might have surprised you the most with where or not being drafted at all? And it sounds like you were talking about with Porter Brown that would be the case, or at least having an opportunity. Although it's been great seeing all the social media posts from Porter about how he's excited about running it back one more time with the folks that occupy left field and being out there. And to have him as a stabilizing force in the outfield, I know has to make you happy.
No doubt. And I tell you, it's really gratifying to know that you have older players that have an option to potentially go professional baseball, but are excited knowing that they have two options, and the other being able to come back, finish their education, and play another year at Texas. And to me, that just states great. The culture in our clubhouse is so good that, you know, the kids are like, that's fine. I didn't get my number, so I can't wait to get back to school. And so that's something you strive for as a coach, to, you know, have those options. And, you know, we dealt with it with Eric Kennedy last year. And, you know, I think more than anything, he was a little frustrated with how his season ended. But, you know, he had a hamstring injury that cost him 8 weeks and just really never got back in the groove. And if you ask him today, do you regret coming back last year? He would say it was absolutely the best thing that could happen to him. So you just never know. You just don't want to force the draft because you get told of age and leverage and things that the professional side do make a point to you know, the drafted players. And so I just think our kids are doing a good job of doing their homework.
Did it get, I don't know if intriguing, interesting, suspenseful for you during these final days for Dylan Campbell and what was going on with the Dodgers and all that until the Dodgers went above slot to pay him the $500,000? Did it get kind of intriguing with the way you were following and keeping in touch with DC about how all that was going on?
I talked to DC probably definitely more than any other player. I remember the first conversation I had with him right when we got back, probably a week into the summer. And I said, all right, DC, what's it going to take to get you back? He goes, Coach, I need a new set of golf clubs. I'm like, okay, I can buy those personally. But no, it's very intriguing because, you know, I think DC is a great player and is close to a five-tool player that I've had. But when you look at his history, he came on late in 22. He started slow. So if you look at what happened at Globe Life early first weekend, that's when you have a lot of brass, a lot of scouting directors, a lot of people making decisions in the building. And he didn't have a very good weekend. And so at times that first impression is what people stick in their head. And he just continued to get better and better and better and finish strong. So I think if you compare him to like a Dylan Cruz or a Langford from Florida, they're exceptional players. But I don't think he's far behind either one of them. And I say that honestly because those guys have been superstars since high school. And Dylan was playing football and toting the football around in the greater Houston area and then playing baseball. And so his maturation as a baseball player has taken a little longer. But now I think he's an exceptional gift for the Dodgers, and I would have loved to have him back, but I'm proud of him and happy for him.
Let me get your thoughts. Obviously, we're visiting with Longhorns head coach David Pierce talking about his ball club. Here we are on July 27th, so it's not exactly an equitable question, but in your mind, or at least off the top of your head, take me through what you see right now before you even get into fall ball and everybody that's on board with your team. As you look at it position by position, what you think you have right now and the competition at certain positions and certain guys at certain things. What rolls through your mind when you look at your defensive alignment around the field?
Much more experienced than last year, a little bit more set in roles. You look at Rylan Galdan, who played a very significant role behind Garrett last year, but gained a lot of experience. But then we also had a kid that was injured in Kimball Schuessler that is taking huge strides in his rehab and in his work and his commitment to the team. And you look at Jared Thomas at first base, he may end up in the outfield because we have some pretty good options there. Jack looks to be ready to have a great season, but he's going to get pushed by some really good younger players and guys that are, I think, potential to be really good. But Jack has just worked his tail off, and he's one of those guys that you look up and go, he just keeps getting better. He's a sponge, and he has no fear of making adjustments and tinkering a little bit to just try to get better. And I think Jalen Flores got a chance to step in at shortstop and be great. And getting Peyton Powell back is just a big get for us as well. Then you add Porter in the outfield, and the kid Gasparino, and then you throw in Thomas, and then we've got some other kids that are going to just push them. We picked up a JC kid out of California and another kid from Penn that's a local Austinite, and so it's just a lot of intriguing pieces, in my opinion, with a little extra experience in those positions. And the first thing that sticks out in my head, though, is starting pitching. You can come back knowing that potentially 3 weekend starters before you do anything with LBJ and Hurley. That's pretty encouraging.
No doubt. Here, a question for you that somebody came in. I know you really appreciate the well thought out, cerebral, analytical kind of question. And here's somebody that said, with the addition of the portal, have you had to adjust your day-to-day planning and time management to ensure that you can be more efficient every day? How's that for a question?
That's a in-depth question for sure. It's interesting because at this time of the year you have assistant coaches on the road, but they have access to the portal, and we don't really just check the 3,000 in the portal. It's 5 names a day that somebody's telling us about a player, and that's from the history of our networking of just having people across the country that kind of knows what I'm about and type of player that I want. And then we have a little bit more narrow gap of how we start approaching that. And we hit our networks more than anything before we start offering. And we have film. I mean, there's film on every kid. And so that's kind of the first thing. We grab some names and then we just jump into True Media or Synergy and start looking at those guys, and then start using our networks and our references and kind of narrowing it down. Does that player fit into us, and can we afford him, and do we have room for him? And that's the key, is just we got some really older kids that have not performed or not played as much per se as some other players, but they're vital roles in our clubhouse, and they make guys around them better, and they make this culture work. And so you're just constantly managing that. But on a day-to-day basis, I think our coaches probably communicate that. If it's a group call or a group message, it's constant. So it's never a dull moment. It's just constant, where you're on the phone or texting just about all day.
The one other thing I wanted to ask you about, and it was the announcement came down a couple of days ago, the reorganization of the staff and the way you've got it set up now. Steve Rodriguez returning again. Caleb Longley is a full-time assistant. Philip Miller back from the special assistant role into that. And getting Tulo back. Troy Tulowitzki coming back as director of player development, and having Chris Gordon, continuing that role of coordinator of hitting and pitching development. Carly Todd had to kind of do a couple of jobs last year, both as director of operations and that director of player development. She'll slide into that regular transition into being director of operations. And you handling the primary pitching coach duties. And I wanted to get your thoughts on these decisions and how the staff reorganization came about.
Craig, you're just such a Hall of Famer. I mean, I'm impressed that you waited on the back end to hit the staff rearrangement and restructuring. That's pretty good. That's pretty good on your part.
Hey, we always say it's about the kids first, right?
That's exactly right. Always. Honestly, it was a very tough and stressful time because I loved our staff last year, but I also knew that when we brought in Philip in-house, it was kind of in projection of what's going to happen next year moving into the SEC eventually. But for us to get him back on the field, he's going to stay with the infielders. And, you know, Troy and him worked so well together in the past. And by the way, that's just huge get. It's just getting Tulo back. He's just tremendous in the building. The things that he offers, the things that he brings to the coaches, things that he brings to the support staff, the players, and he's a true professional, and he just knows how to do it right. And so, you know, having his eyes out there is important and kind of helps me with that side of the position players. And so, when you look at Caleb, this guy is young and aggressive, and I think he's one of the future big-time coaches, but also loves to recruit. And recruiting is not always fun. And he's young, he's got a lot of energy, and he loves being out in the field. And so primarily as the coordinator, but at the same time, everybody's going to be involved in recruiting. But he did a good job with our outfielders in hitting as well. And so he also has a good relationship with Tulo. So you put those three together. You know, Rod's a baseball coach. He can do a lot of different things and wear a lot of different hats. So I actually went to him just recently and said, why don't you move into the catching, and then that coordinates with me a little bit more with pitching catching. And I think it could be a good marriage and how we set that up. But honestly, we were just, when you look at the staff, we were pitching heavy. Gordo does such a great job of preparing us. And then, you know, I've done this pitching thing for so many years and I love it, but you know, you always try to feel like, right, I need to manage more. I still manage and I'll still be involved in everything, but I just think primarily I feel real comfortable of getting back in the bullpen and working a lot more one-on-one with our pitchers. It's just something that I've always enjoyed. I've been a pitching coach since 2006 and continued doing that as a head coach through my first 2 years here. And so I just felt like for the best situation for our players, that creates the best structure for our staff. And you mentioned Carly. She's done such a great job in all the roles that she's been in. You know, she started out as the SID and then moved into Director of Player Development. And then, you know, when we were one person short last year, she did a tremendous job double dipping, her and Philip as well. And so now she's moving back into, you know, more of a conventional ops position and sliding Tulo in that Director of Development. And so it's just a lot of good pieces. It's not as big of a change as everybody's probably thinking. But I think it's going to coordinate really well for our team.
Let me ask you this. I know other folks are wanting. In fact, somebody just texted in as well, but I had it on my list. Are you still going to be out there dodging line drives in the third base coaching box, or have you made an adjustment there as well?
You know, I love coaching third base, and it's interesting. I have this one guy that sits above the third base dugout. Every time I run out there, it's like, be aggressive today, Dave. And I'm thinking, what does that really mean? Because if the defense allows it, the pitching allows it, we're always aggressive. But I do enjoy that part, and I feel like I see the game a little bit better from calling the offensive side. But I'm probably going to relinquish those duties, either Philip or to Rod or maybe Caleb. I think Philip's kind of the front runner there. He's been around me long enough to know how I like to operate that. And then I'll be involved in a lot of the decision making, but I think I'm gonna retire myself from third base.
Yeah, well, at least we still get you healthy, because there were some times the last 2 years I was a little concerned. I mean, you did a good job, deftly and dodging and doing, as I said on the broadcast, the do-si-do, getting away from some of those foul balls. That was something out. I mean, all right, does that become also a clear and present signal to you, going, maybe I'm getting a sign here that maybe there's a time to make a move on that deal? And wasn't your fault.
I got to get with Coach Couch and start working my agility if I'm going to stay out there, because, I mean, these guys are hitting the ball hard, and I see it well. It's just sometimes that depth perception kind of messes me up. I quit trying to field ground balls over there just because I just try to get out of the way of everything. But, yeah, it's probably time.
Okay. Hey, I appreciate you doing this, and I look forward to seeing you around the corner, and I hope you and Susan get a little bit of time off anyway before this thing ramps up again with fall practice in the fall. But I appreciate you taking a few minutes to join me this morning.
Oh, yeah. We're going to take a little time next week, see my granddaughters, and just enjoy a week with them. But all's good. We appreciate you guys, and looking forward to our fall sports and being a supporter of our other coaches, man. Our coaches do such a great job, and, I think we do a great job of supporting each other as well. And I think that also helps the department and players supporting players. So it's a good spot. Proud of everything, and so ready to move forward.
Hey, I got to ask you one more thing. And you were down, and you and I didn't get a chance to see one another at coaching school, but there you were in Houston, and you and your brother-in-law doing a session. You and Gary Kubiak, for folks who didn't know, is Coach Pierce's brother-in-law, and you were doing a session, and I was at the time doing a panel discussion thing with Mac Brown, and I didn't get a chance to be there for the thing. But of course, here's the things I heard. One, I heard that Jeff Howe told me he ruined the whole thing by asking you a nuts and bolts staff question and roster question. Yeah, immediately. He didn't waste any time on that, and he readily admits that. But I also heard it was a real entertaining and engaging type of thing. So, I mean, how did that all come about? I mean, other than obviously the Coaches Association being in touch with you guys about you and your brother-in-law doing that session.
Yeah, it was interesting because Coach West is in charge of getting all the speakers, and he was the head coach at Brenham. Actually just got inducted in the Hall of Fame for Texas high school football. Really good man, great coach, but he reached out to me and asked me if I'd be interested in doing something for the baseball coaches, because they're now creating an extension of the spring sports in the summer camp, in the summer clinic. And so we started talking, and he knew Gary's my brother-in-law. He goes, man, Gary did this for us 5 years ago, and he was exceptional. And so the whole time we're talking, trying to figure out what topic he would like me to speak on. And so I said, hey, what about this? I said, what if we had an Aggie football guy and a Longhorn baseball guy and just in a Q&A on leadership? And he goes, Coach, if you can pull that off, that would be tremendous. And so I reached out to Coop, and he was all for it. And then we reached out to Mark Berman, who has just retired with the Houston Fox Sports. And so the three of us just kind of pieced it together and sort of winged it. But I thought it went well. But it was just more about, how we kind of bounce things off of each other and how you utilize people that you respect that can help your program. And Gary's definitely been one of those guys for me.
Yeah, no doubt. Hey, David, thanks again for doing this. I appreciate it, and I hope you enjoy a little bit of downtime. Look forward to seeing you around the corner. And again, thanks for joining me this morning.
All right. I appreciate you. Take care.
All right, you bet. That's David Pierce, Longhorns head baseball coach. And for the person on the Specs text line who asked the question and said, what about mound visits when Coach Pierce goes to the mound? Does it count as pitching coach or head coach? It's the same thing. If it's coming from the dugout, it's the same thing. You have your official visit, and if you come out a second time in the inning, if the visit comes from the dugout, then the second visit, then the pitcher is removed. It's just like in the past, whether it was Woody Williams last year or somebody else making a visit out to the mound to visit with a pitcher, and then you knew when Coach Pierce was coming out, a change was going to be made unless it was a medical type situation, checking on the health of a pitcher. But if there's 2 visits from the dugout, it doesn't matter who the person is doing that. That's different from the on-field visits when they go to the mound. It's different from that from a position player coming in the dugout as opposed to coming from the dugout there. And as you heard him say, he's probably going to step aside on the third base coaching duty. So could see Philip Miller there and perhaps Steve Rodriguez continuing at first base. Maybe Caleb Longley gets involved with that as a full-time assistant. We'll see about all that. All right, our thanks to Coach Pierce. Coming up, we're going to get to a couple other topics before we get to Inconceivable. We'll do that when we continue with Light the Tower on the Horn, 104.9, 101.9, AM 1260. We're live, local, and digital on the Horn app and at hornfm.com. Just the gentle, regular reminder that if you need to do something about your home entertainment setup, and, football season is just around the corner, the NFL is switching over with the Sunday ticket package over to YouTube, and then college football, if you don't have things set up the way you want with your streaming devices, let alone the appliances that you're using to watch television or get your audio entertainment, then if it's not how you want it to be, then you should be on the phone with Tom McKay at Audiovisual Consultations. He has the equipment, the knowledge, the expertise, and an outstanding staff to give you the home entertainment system you really want. And they'll work within your budget because he's staying competitive with his pricing. So you don't have to worry about going out and shopping for that 75-inch HD TV in the big box stores and worrying about the mounting and the wiring and all the equipment. At Tom and his staff handle all of that. You don't have to worry about any of that sort of thing. And if you're interested in a home theater setup, like a 90-inch screen, all the way up to 150 inches, well, they can handle that at AV Consultations. So check it out for yourself. You can go online at avconsultations.com. When they're ready, give Tom a call, 512-255-8678. Let Tom McKay and Audiovisual Consultations help you realize the home entertainment system of your dreams.
Another turning point, a fork stuck in the road. Time grabs you by the wrist, directs you where to go. So make the best of this test and don't ask why. It's not a question, but a lesson learned in time. It's something unpredictable, but in the end is right. I hope you had the time of your life.
This is Light the Tower on the Horn. Our thanks again to Longhorns head baseball coach David Pierce joining us here on the program as we got his thoughts on the signings and his roster makeup, as well as his staff adjustments and reorganization of his coaching staff as well. So our thanks, and we appreciate that. Captain Caveman on the text line goes, geez, how depressing. he was going after you about that, Cam, on your choice of the return cut.
Hey, I'm just trying to say that we've all had the time of our life.
We have, and listen,
it's a good song.
Okay, man. Hey, Captain, you know how this business and everything works. Door closes, another one opens, things of that nature. And I will say this: those who have heard all of us, whose time will be ending here after next Tuesday. We've all said virtually the same thing, that we've really enjoyed our time together. Really enjoyed being around each other and getting a chance to work with one another. And things. I've been waiting to use this quote, and I'm going to use it now, and then I'm going to use it again before I leave here because it's such a good quote. If you were a fan of the Star Trek movies, most notably, which I thought the best one, because there were a lot of, as they got, like most movie sequels, the more they did, the less attractive they became. But if you saw Star Trek II, The Wrath of Khan, okay, you remember how that works, where I hope I'm not doing a spoiler alert. The movie did come out in 1982, but there's the point where, Spock goes into that compartment, that room that's been flooded with all that radiation to get the reactor up and going so they can get into warp speed and get away from the Genesis Project explosion. So they do that, and then Kirk runs down there, and he sees that Spock is dying, and he's right there, and he looks at him right before he goes away, and other than saying, Jim, I have always and will always be your friend. I mean, other than that, and does the live long and prosper thing, which, by the way, took me a long time to do that.
You can do it.
The Vulcan thing. It took me a while to be able to do that.
Is there a trick to it?
No, it was just muscle stuff over time. Just I might have had to actually push my fingers together initially, but then it became much more natural afterwards. But the quote he said, and I've carried it with me through my life, professionally and personally, is, and I quote, "There are always possibilities." So you just think about that. There are always possibilities.
For the Specs texture saying, how about REM's "It's the End of the World as We Know It" is not the end of the world, though. It's not. I know.
Well, as we know it on this station,
like
maybe it might be there, but yeah. And Bizarro Dale Dudley says, what lies behind us and what lies before us are tiny matters compared to what lies within us. Absolutely. Well said. CB just tweeted a thing that God, where Kirk is yelling at him, that sort of thing. Where he says, "I'm laughing at the superior intellect," where he does that thing to draw him into that deal. But like I said, there's always possibilities. You know what the possibilities are? There's a possibility that you might win a copy of Dave Campbell's Texas Football Magazine, and I'm thinking to all the those who are listening on the app. If you're caller number 15, 555, be the 15th caller right now at 512-447-3776. Be caller number 15. You'll win a copy of Dave Campbell's Texas Football Magazine from us here at The Horn. Up next, we have Inconceivable. We continue with Light the Tower on The Horn, 104.9, 101.9 AM 1260. We're live, local, and digital on the Horn app and at hornfm.com. It's going to be another. So right now I'm looking at a weather app on my phone, and we could actually be due for a cooling break tomorrow. The high might only be 99. I know tongue-in-cheek when I say that, but given the fact that today the forecast high is 100, and then Saturday 100, Sunday 102, Monday 103, Tuesday 103, well, you get the idea. It goes on and on and on. So clearly we're in the hottest time of the year. Why not try to make it a little easier on yourself with a new Timberline solar shingle roof from our friend John Hardy and his great staff at Divided Sky Roofing and Solar. Of course, the higher power bills are rolling in right now. Perhaps you already have a solar system, whether it be shingles or in addition to the solar shingles with the roof, maybe you have the solar panels. But if you don't have a backup battery, you're not getting everything that's due you from that. Because with a backup battery, you're able to use all of the power that you make instead of giving it back to the power company. And the batteries are now covered by the Inflation Reduction Act. So you get that tax credit, and we can all certainly use that. John and his staff are solar experts. They can repair and service your existing solar system. Those other roofers you hear about are just selling you a solar roof. Divided Sky Roofing and Solar can repair and service your existing solar system. The entire crew are all master electricians. They're all NABCET certified. That's the solar version of the master plumber. Trust your roofing and solar needs to the experts, our friends at Divided Sky Roofing and Solar. It's 512-995-ROOF, TEC license number 37397, or check them out on the web at dividedskyaustin.com. Well, first of all, Out of inconceivable. Slick text in again, says Slick here again. I don't intend to be a nuisance. I'm really confused about how to pronounce Neto's name. I know you care about getting names right. The pronunciation guide is very different from what I hear from media. Please pronounce his name. I can listen all morning today. So I think the difference is whether you're just pronouncing the E as a long A or as an ET. But what I heard him say was Neto. And I know on the pronunciation guide it says NATO, like the North Atlantic Treaty Organization. That's a tomato thing almost, I think. Neto, I kind of split the difference, really. It's like there's a town in Wise County out near Decatur. Now, Cameron, this town is spelled A-L-V-O-R-D. A-L-V-O-R-D. How would you pronounce that? A-L-V-O-R-D.
Alfred.
Right. Alvord or Alvord,
yeah.
Right? Old-timers in the community say pronounce like the R is an I. Alvoid. And I couldn't bring myself to go Alvoid, but I would split the difference just for the people that the longtime residents say Alvoid, like it was an A.
Mm-hmm.
And that's how it kind of is for me with NATO. You could say NATO or you can say Neto, or I kind of split the difference and say Neto. So that's why. I hope that helps, Slick. But that's and so Yume Zulu would be the other. It would be the last name on that. So hopefully that answers it for that situation. So it's okay. It's good to know that we've got that. See, Longhorn fan in Denton says Alvoid. I'm telling you, the old timers say Alvoid up there, but there's no I in that. So I would split the difference and pronounce the I like an A, Alvoid. Just so that when I was doing the old high school scoreboard show on radio up there, the thing that the TV show that I do now is model, and people say, what did he say? Did he say Alvoid or Alvord? Or I never said Alvord. It would be that kind of thing. So there you go. Joe number 2 just texted in a picture of a baby with a very concerned look on his face and said, this baby's first word is going to be inconceivable. We have that. Anyway, I hope that helps. We'll see if that indeed helps out. Okay. Got a couple of things to get to. First of all, there is a man in Washington, D.C., or in the Georgetown area there, who is selling a wall, an actual wall, and he's selling it for $50,000. He told the Washington Post he was selling it and because he'd had issues with the owner of the house to which the wall is attached. It's a brick wall, and it looks like it's about 6 or 7 feet tall, and it's kind of attached to a brick building. Well, the median sale price of homes in the neighborhood is $1.6 million. And the guy who owns the wall and the stuff that's attached to it is selling it for $50,000. The listing has that. And he goes, and the listing says, own a piece of Georgetown, not Texas, in the capital city. This wall is located at 30th and M Northwest. The opportunities are limitless. Somebody said the wall is not in great shape. It's like crumbling there. But you too can own a piece of a wall in the Washington, D.C. area for $50,000. Okay, there's speaking of location, laser mapping is a big thing now. And on the Yucatan Peninsula, there is a laser mapping has identified a lost city. It was abandoned more than 1,000 years ago. So Juan Carlos Fernandez Diaz, who's an assistant professor in civil engineering at the University of Houston, spotted the city in March during an airborne archaeological survey of the area. And for the past decade, he's been one of those trailblazers in the archaeological application of LIDAR, that is airborne light detection and radar equipment that can find structures that are obscured by dense tree canopies and other vegetation, relics that in some cases reveal traces left by a lost civilization. So archaeologists subsequently surveyed this site, which they've named Okumtum, for whatever reason, for 6 weeks in May and June, found 50-foot-tall structures resembling pyramids, pottery, and engravings that they believe date back to between 600 and 900 AD, known as the Late Classic period in the Mayan civilization. So there's that. All right, you need to know this. Going from lost civilizations to perhaps unknown civilizations. An Air Force intelligence officer told the United States Congress, actually did this, in testimony to a House committee yesterday. Retired Major David Grush, as part of an investigation into reports of unidentified aerial phenomena, that the U.S. government has a long-standing program that retrieves unidentified flying objects, and said that non-human biologics have been found at crash sites where the objects were recovered. Let me repeat that. Non-human. In 2021, the Pentagon created a group to look into the phenomenon after more than 100 sightings were reported. And by the following year, the Pentagon said it had received several hundreds of new reports of unidentified aerial phenomena, UFOs, we think of them. The Pentagon has not confirmed that it has a program to retrieve these objects. But this intelligence officer, who served for 14 years in the Air Force, told Congress he served as a representative on 2 Pentagon task forces, and in his testimony, he told lawmakers he was informed, quote, of a multi-decade UAP, same thing as UFO, crash, retrieval, and reverse engineering program during his work. And he said, and I quote, as I've stated publicly, biologics came from some of these recoveries. And then he was asked, were they human or non-human biologics? Non-human, he said. And that was the assessment of people with direct knowledge of the program I was talking to who are currently still within the program. Stay tuned for more on that. And finally, Cam, this is just for you. It didn't happen in Florida, but it certainly could have. A woman was arrested in California on Tuesday. Serious charge here. She was standing by the side of a highway near San Francisco's Bay Bridge and started firing a gun at passersby during afternoon drive traffic, 4:40 in the afternoon. She was yelling at other drivers and shooting. Oh, I left out one part. She was completely naked. A naked woman standing by the side of the road firing her weapon.
Are you sure it was in Florida?
That's why I said it could have been. It could have been. Didn't mean to bury the lead there. She got out of a car while still clothed first, was yelling at other drivers. Then she got out in the car, got back past a toll plaza, then exited completely naked. She started firing a gun while pointing it at other cars. She discharged the weapon entirely, ran out of bullets. Then, after initially not dropping the firearm, even though she had dropped all the rest of her clothing, she eventually surrendered, was taken into custody, and is being examined. Now, does that not sound like a Florida type of story, something we could have?
Hopefully she isn't one that's going to move to Austin from California.
Well,
she can stay in Cali.
She'll have to put some clothes on first. Bizarro Dale Dudley, so got to be Oklahoma, right? California, firing at cars, scary sight. Completely naked as she did it. So, there you go. So, all right. Keith Moreland will join us coming up next hour. We'll look forward to that. Talk a lot of different things. And we had a winner, right, on the Dave Campbell's Texas Football Magazine?
We did. Congrats to Scott McDonald.
Scott, caller number 15, Perseverance Pays Off. So got a A few more days of giving those away and online at hornfm.com. So that's a good thing. So stay tuned. Keith Moreland joins us here in hour number 2 of Light the Tower on the Horn, 104.9, 101.9, AM 1260. We're live, local, and digital on the Horn app and at hornfm.com. Here we are in hour number 2 of Light the Tower on the Horn. Craig Way with you. Jeff Howe out today. He will be back tomorrow. Our final ever show in this iteration and incarnation with Cameron Park, our producer. Cam had scheduled vacation before any of the other stuff started happening, so he's going up to New York. And you said Montreal?
Yeah, Montreal. I'm going to pay homage to the Big O. Gotten really into Expos history.
See, he's reading the book, and this gets us into our next guest, my longtime broadcaster, Longhorn football and baseball from 2000 too, and of course even prior to that, when Bill Schoening was involved with us, obviously with baseball, but Keith Moreland and I did football and baseball together consecutively from 2002 all the way to 2010, and then of course Keith does an outstanding job at Longhorn Network working with Zeke, with Greg Swindell on those, and Keith still joins me on a lot of road baseball broadcast. So it's good to see you again. I'm glad you're here, and I was about to mention that, and Cameron, before you were born, 1986, I'm on a baseball trip with a buddy. We go to Olympic Stadium in Montreal, a Sunday afternoon game, Cubs, Expos. I didn't remember too much about it other than the Cubs won. I think it was 2-1. That was the first time I ever had an individual round pizza. They called it Pizza Rondo, and it was really good. I remember that. But we had seats that we could almost reach out and touch the left field foul pole. We were like first row, upper deck, down the line. And so I went back, because of Baseball Reference was such a great website where you can look up any game virtually from any time. And I looked up that game, and none other than Keith Moreland hit a home run on that Sunday afternoon.
Bill Gullickson was probably pitching. I wore that poor guy out. He's later on a good friend, but I think I took him beat 6 or 7 times. I wasn't a huge home run hitter, but this particular guy, if I hit it on the head of the bat, guys, it had a great chance to get out of the ballpark.
Well, the Phillies were such a thorn in the side of the Expos in the 70s. The Expos were so close to getting. Mike Smick had that home run. I think that's going to go down and probably has tortured Expos history.
Well, it was great for me because it helped us win a world championship. So I remember the time we had played. If you went back and look at that game, Cameron, I believe for both teams it was extra innings, right at 10 innings or 11 innings, and it was expanded rosters. I believe that there were 55 or 56 players played in that game.
Jeez.
I mean, I started the game behind the plate, got a base hit. They lifted me for a pinch runner, and that was in the 7th inning. And I had 3 more hours of nerve-wracking deal because that's the day we clinched.
Yeah.
And
in 1980?
Yeah, it was a Saturday afternoon national television game that lasted about 6 hours.
So I've heard that field, or read that the field was basically like you were playing on concrete, and that's what messed up Andre Dawson so much.
No question.
Was his knees were already bad before he was drafted, and playing on that in the cold, hard winters, it must have been pretty tough.
Well, I played a game there. We started at 17 degrees, and they said, "Oh, it's got a roof." It's 17 degrees, man. It doesn't matter if there's a roof.
It's cold.
It's just cold. But the unique thing about it, you could play and be behind the plate. At that time, I was a catcher. But I started a game there as a catcher where the pitcher and the catcher, we weren't in the snow, but if you looked at center field, it's snowing like crazy because it was such an odd shape. Obviously, the arena was built to run the relays for the 76 Olympics. Well, when they tried to fit a baseball field into it, some of it was over the overhang, and so the hole in the roof was more out towards center field than it was over home plate. So you would have parts of the ballpark where it was snowing and parts of the ballpark where it wasn't.
There was ice patches, too, sometimes on the field where outfielders had to navigate, remember where the ice patch was so you don't fall on your butt.
Oh, it was well, it was better than Jerry Park.
Yeah, I can imagine that.
So let's just go to that. It was better than the previous.
I'm trying to remember. You didn't actually play in a game in Jerry Park, did you?
I'd never played in a game in Jerry Park, but it couldn't help. But the first time I got called up, we go to Montreal. I had to go look at it because it was still intact. Because in '77, I had not gotten to the big leagues yet, but in '77 they were still playing in Jerry Park. When they moved over in '78, when they finally got it into the thing, Jerry Park was still up. So I took the train, or the metro they called it in Montreal, and went over and saw the ballpark. And I went, "Oh my gosh, can you believe this was a big league ballpark?" It's just hard to believe.
Wow. Okay, so I thought that I found the right one. Let's see. I thought I found it, but I may be wrong. You did have an RBI double off Bob Sebra.
Okay.
That day, and you went 2 for 4, scored a run in that game, and that was a 2-1 Sunday afternoon game in Montreal. So that was the one I guess I was thinking about off of that. But I didn't even realize it now. I just remembered that it was a 2-1 Sunday game at Olympic Stadium in Montreal. So yeah, I know that goes back goes back a little bit. I was, just making sure that I got the right date on that because I wanted to make sure I understood.
Cameron, there is still a place there. Some of the best ribs you'll ever have is called Barbie Barn.
Oh, please.
Just put that in your. I'm
adding it to the list right now. Thank you.
I'm right at 100 years old, I would think by now.
Wow!
But it's been there a long time. It's right off the main drag. I can't Saint Germain. Is that the Saint?
Yeah, I think you're right about that.
It's been a long time since I've been to Montreal. There's a few brain cells gone.
I wanted to have you come in for a variety of reasons. Not the least of which, obviously, this is down in the final few shows for me on this thing. But there was a time you and I and Rod Babers did a show together.
Absolutely.
We did that, and then working on the games as well. Also, through some rescheduling, I wound up having David Pierce on last hour, and we talked about.
I was listening.
Okay, so I wanted to get your impressions. Even before it wound up with the Coach Pierce interview being rescheduled to this morning. The roster makeup as well as the reorganization of his coaching staff.
I look at it the same thing as you hear David talk about it. I mean, you're always, if you're setting still, you're backing up.
Mm-hmm.
And I think Coach Pierce, made decisions. He's got to look at it. It all falls on his shoulders to, what happens. And so the coaching staff and the realignment, it's great to have Tulo back. I think they'll figure out that part of it and start to get comfortable with that. So I really don't look at that as that big of change, to be honest, because Coach Pierce is obviously involved in everything anyway as a head coach. Well, now, and he's been a pitching coach, so it will take a little more off of his everyday offensive stuff and his ideas. What he does offensively, but he's got some veteran guys. Philip's a veteran guy. Steve is obviously a veteran guy, and has done that. So I feel really comfortable with that part. The part that is so unique and what's got to drive him crazy is trying to get your roster together right now. It's just really difficult to do.
Especially with the portal and with those who didn't sign and all of that sort of stuff.
Yeah, because you got 11.7. You got to juggle that. I mean, you always say, well, it's off time for Coach Pierce. I think probably this is the one that makes him cannot sleep much at night. I think once you get to everybody on campus and you get into the fall, I think it becomes it's just baseball now. Now we got to take what we have here and adjust and find the guys and see if we can help them get better and make them better and that kind of thing. But it's a nerve-wracking industry, and it has changed drastically in the last 5 years.
Wow. For those, and I've had a couple of people ask this on the Specs text line, and we've explained it a little bit, but you have been in this situation, and you have been around a lot of people who have been in this situation, so you can explain it even better, and that is the whole thing about when a player is considering whether to sign or not and slot value and things of that nature. And it did come down to the final 24 hours for Dylan Campbell before he signed with the Dodgers, and they went above slot to sign him at $500,000, which I think is a good deal for him, obviously. How about your thoughts on all of that?
Well, I think you've got to look at it as a family. I know Dylan and I've met his dad and his mom, and they looked at it as a family, and I'm sure they had to make a decision one way or the other. And I think probably he had a number in mind. I think that's the other thing that you need to do is have a number, say, hey, if I'm going to give up and forego a senior year of baseball and scholarship and everything else that goes on to be a collegiate player and making the trips to Omaha that he's been involved in and that kind of thing, I best of luck to him. I think you got to take a shot. How do I say this and not offend Longhorn fans? I don't want to offend Longhorn fans. It's a great place to play. It's one of the great places to play baseball anywhere in America. And so if you're going to play college baseball, it's a great place to be. But all of these young men have great aspirations of being major league players.
Sure. And
you get that shot, and it comes where an organization steps up, goes over slot, willing to take it. They're looking at you saying, hey, we think you're a guy that could help us and be a part of our organization. I think you got to take your opportunity when you get that opportunity.
Yeah.
And I don't look at that as much at money. as I look at, hey, this organization, first of all, great organization to be with. I mean, I know you're a Dodger fan, but for years, the minor league system and what they've done in the Dodger system has been the best in baseball, and it's no different now.
Yeah. And then in his individual case, to be a 4th-round pick and for them to jump above slot, and he's going to accrue $500,000 to sign off of that, it's a good deal for him.
You got to go.
Yeah.
Craig, I know we're trying to put it in logic, but it's just you got to go.
Yeah.
I mean, you got to take that opportunity. You've always wanted to do it. It's a lifelong dream, and you're a professional athlete.
All right. How different? You've seen it. I've seen it. We've all seen it. Longhorn fans who are loyal, very loyal Longhorn baseball fans. Some of them get a little antsy and impatient about stuff. When are they going to win another college World Series championship, a national championship? When is it going to do this? And I've heard you say this before, and I've heard other learned baseball minds, your broadcast partner on Longhorn Network. I've heard Greg Swindell say this. I've heard Kyle Peterson talk about this, that college baseball is so different now than it was even 5 years ago.
Oh, no doubt. Because
of the portal, which has equalized a lot of the playing field and made it even more challenging, even for the annual huge contenders. LSU won the national championship. When was the last time LSU won a national championship? 2009 when they beat Texas.
Yeah.
Before that, it's a different playing field now.
And how many more times has Texas been there than LSU since then?
Yeah.
With an opportunity. Because it's getting to Omaha and then getting the opportunity. I mean, a break here, a break there. In the last 5 years, Texas could definitely had claimed their 7th.
Yep.
There's no doubt about it. Craig, college baseball has changed so much that there's a new program. There's a new script that they had to get there. And you heard Coach Pierce earlier in the last hour talking with you. He's trying to look at that script. What do you have to do? What are the things we're going to have to do to make sure the University of Texas is where it's always been? More trips than anybody to the College World Series.
Mm-hmm.
It's one of the elite programs in the history of the sport, if not the elite program. How do you maintain that? So you've got to find all those avenues. You've got to work through NIL. You got to walk through the portal. Do you have to continue to recruit guys while you have them on campus? I get the opportunity, Craig. Every team that comes in to play the Longhorns, Greg and I go across, talk to their head coach, try to find out a little bit about their team, to try to put their team in the best light that we can.
Some are a little more forthcoming with their team information than others.
Yeah, absolutely. Sometimes there's no sense in me walking and spending that time. But I start every year for the last 2 years. I start with the first question. I said, well, how's recruiting going of your team? And they all start laughing, and they all know exactly what I'm talking about because while the season is going on, you're still recruiting players that are playing for you now because of transfer and NIL. So you just keep it is a nonstop process, and that's why it's so important to get a staff together. It's somebody that's watching and doing all that and understanding what's going on because there will be changes even at midterm. Now, I think there's going to have to be some rule changes of when you can do this and when you can't do this. Somebody is going to have to step forward and close the window and say, hey, here's your window if you want the opportunity to move. Now, I know there are some
deadlines on when you could do it.
Some deadlines, but there's going to have to be something that's really defined and say, all right, then it allows the staff, wherever staff that may be, the University of Texas, Texas A&M, University of Oklahoma, Skip Johnson, their staff can go to work on the 28, 25, 27 players they can carry in a conference game or the 35 that you can have on campus.
Yeah. Okay. Keith Moreland joining us during this portion of the program here on Light the Tower on the Horn. Of the guys that are coming back now, who are you most excited about that'll be in a Longhorn uniform next year?
I think Tanner Witt. I just want to see. I want to see this young man come back to be what he was. You would hate to see a guy that was at the top of his game as an 18, 19-year-old kid have an injury and him not get back to where he had the great feel. He doesn't have to come back and throw 100 miles an hour, but to come back and have good feel of his breaking ball, his understanding because he knows how to pitch. I'm real excited to see him come back, take hold of that leadership sort of scenario, because he's always got a smile on his face. He's one of those guys that Coach Pierce took him everywhere, even though he's injured, because he was important to the club, what he does to the club. He's vocal. He's very, I'm just excited to see him to go forward, and would love to see him get that great feel and to be able to be that number one guy, because he is a guy, if he's right and he's healthy, he's a number one Friday guy as good as anybody in the country. There was a guy at LSU who helped them win a world championship as the number one pick in the draft. And that's exactly what Paul did. And I'd love to see Tanner make that jump and be back healthy to get that done.
Let me ask you some thoughts on some other guys since we're on the subject of pitching. LeBaron Johnson, LBJ, who went undrafted, which was unfathomable to some people, but of course that keyword signability comes in when he has more flexibility, being a redshirt sophomore.
Yes.
And then Charlie Hurley, who was a guy that Coach Pierce was talking about this when he was on the flight coming back from Palo Alto. He was already starting to do his exit interviews with some of the guys on the plane to get their thoughts. Charlie was sitting 2 rows behind me, I think, and he went down and he was asking him, what are you thinking about for the draft? It happens, or, the round happens. What would it take? This and that. You got to go through all that process as well. So both are coming back.
Yeah, and for Charlie, I think it's consistency. I think that's the big word. I think that cost him a little bit in the eyes of the professional, because his frame is outstanding. His delivery, he can't throw a ball straight. I mean, some of that is the reason he would struggle sometimes to throw strikes, but he's got great movement to his ball. He's a guy that can throw a sinker and swing and miss. They can actually swing and miss on a sinker. You don't see that very often at any level, that you can throw a fastball. And for folks that don't know the game of baseball, a sinker is a fastball that has real good downward movement. And when you say he's got swing and miss sinker, that's a term you don't say very often at any level. That's true. He's got swing and miss sinker. So, yeah, he's another guy. You look at what's available to come back. You got to feel good about where Texas is going into the last year of Big 12 play and a new schedule against other schools coming into the league. University of Houston, obviously BYU will come to town. There's a lot of things that
I think they're going to Central Florida. I think they'll be doing that.
I'm sure we'll be going.
yeah, there you go. In May, no less. What do you want to see out of LBJ?
A consistency. And I thought you saw that growth in the last 5 starts. I didn't break it down. I usually have an opportunity to break it down, but he had a really unbelievable start against LSU, and you thought everybody's light switch went on, and then you saw that inconsistency in that youth. He just hadn't been to the mound. He had not pitched, and you just got to pitch. And then you saw the inconsistency he had in the middle part of the season. And then you saw the growth after May 15th.
We saw him in Kansas even before the May 15th, right before he had the 12 strikeouts.
So you just see that growth. So, you got to feel good. If you just mentioned 3 names, and all 3 could be your weekend rotation. So I feel pretty good about that. Now, you always have to have somebody in the back end of the bullpen, and I think that'll be a work in progress that they'll work throughout the fall.
Keith Moreland here with us right now during our Longhorn Notebook portion of the program. I know one of the guys who really impressed you quite a bit, especially being his first year in college ball, was Jared Thomas. We heard David Pierce say it's the possibility they could see him maybe as a corner outfielder, maybe in right field or in the outfield there, because they have some other options at first base. How about your thoughts on JT?
Well, I think JT probably at the next level, when he gets a chance to go to baseball, will be an outfielder. He runs really well. He's got a above average arm. He could go to the mound if need be. I don't think that this staff and Coach Pierce will do that. But David, if you're out there, you can call back in and say that you might be willing to do that. But he's a guy that has that ability. But the people that I met in pro ball that are some scouts and things before I got the chance to see JT play in college said this guy is could be a plus outfielder. And we know what University of Texas outfield play is like because it's been the best of anybody in America for the last decade, and you have to in the ballpark that they play here at the Dish. So I could very easily see him making that transition. And you get a little more, and I hate to use this term, but I would think that we might get a little more physical. Guy can hit the ball out of the ballpark at first base.
surprised that Porter Brown wound up both undrafted and not getting tendered a free agent opportunity?
You know, a little bit. I think Porter's got a lot of things happening for him. He's obviously smart as a whip. You know, wants to be a doctor, but he also, I mean, I talked to him multiple times during the year. He's still thinking about playing professional ball. So that was a little bit of surprise to me. I don't know. Signability is this big term. I'm not sure that Porter had a big problem with signability. I don't know that.
Right.
But he is so smart, a great young man. You got to love his smile and being around him. So, you know, I will guarantee you that this is a staff that didn't think that they would have Porter Brown coming back.
And we heard David Pierce saying he's happy to have him back. Okay, since you work in the ESPN family, I'll throw out one of their things they like to do: fact or fiction. Fact or fiction. The most surprising everyday player on the Longhorn baseball team this past season was Jack O'Dowd.
No doubt.
So you say that's fact?
Yeah, I think that's fact.
Okay.
We weren't sure exactly what you were going to get for Jackie. There were some struggles in the middle part of the season, but how about what he brought to the table over the last 5 weeks of the season? I mean, what a huge plus. Made all the plays defensively. And
he was the only guy who hit in Arlington at the Big 12 tournament.
You know, and I think that carried in. I think his last series against West Virginia, he was swinging the bat well, and then it just led into the postseason. And, boy, you know, what a great – and then Peyton Powell, I mean, my gosh, every year – the University of Texas, in the history of the sport, has always had somebody that nobody's really counted on that has come forward and been this great player. There was another third baseman before him. Weren't sure what you were going to get, and all of a sudden he hit 16 home runs and a switch hitter named Williams. and then all of a sudden you lose him, and then you find a guy like Peyton Powell. And
in between the two, Skylar Messenger
comes in. You just look at what Peyton brings to the plate, the most flexible hitter I've ever seen, and I think that is so important. Ty Harrington talks about it all the time, about flexibility when you're hitting, and boy, his lower body is so flexible, stays inside the ball so well, and I expect him to have a marvelous year.
All right. We get ready. You're also another guy I know you're very high on and have been since he's been here is Rylan Galvan.
Oh, yeah. I think Rylan Galvan is a 20-home run guy. Think about that. I think he is a big, physical, strong kid that's gotten better. I loved watching him around the ballpark. He was always watching, listening, doing those things that you need to do. He was trying to get better every day, and he's got a tremendous arm. He's got a great body for first or catch, and tremendous power. I mean, it's hard to mention in the same name. He's not the hitter right yet that Melendez is, but he's one of those guys with tremendous power at all directions.
That's the last thing I was going to say before we hit a break here. Ivan is now at AA playing for the Amarillo Sod Poodles in the Texas League. Off to a rip-roaring start there after he hit a club record 18 homers in Hillsborough in the single.
He's got 10 hits, and 6 of them have left the ballpark.
Yeah. So if things progress the way it is, could you see the Diamondbacks bring him up as a September call-up? And B, how far overall do you think he is away from being a major leaguer?
Hell, I don't think that they will bring him up in September. They're in the race.
They are.
Now, they might want to show it to him, and he won't get a lot of time, and they get an opportunity to throw BP to him every day, and all those things where the coaching staff can get used to seeing him. So that's a possibility. But it also starts the time clock.
Oh, yeah, service time.
Clock. And in today's world, they don't like to start that clock. So just because of arbitration and everything else. But I could definitely see him in Florida, in Arizona, in the Arizona Fall League, where they get to send their top 10 prospects, and he is definitely the Diamondbacks in their top 10 prospects. And I could see him going to big league camp next year and starting in AAA, and then there's an opportunity at some point next year they'll start that clock and get him to the big leagues.
Keith, do you think a fair comp for Melendez might be Joey Gallo?
No, I think Gallo has tremendous power and a good job, but Joey was a swing and miss guy one of the great things about Melendez and Troy talked about, Tulo talked about it so much, is not only does he have tremendous power, he's got contact. He does not swing and miss for a guy that could be a 40 home run guy in the big leagues, where Gallo was a swing and miss guy. I mean, he took big swings and he could hit it with tremendous power, but he swung through a lot of balls. Got balls by Melendez doesn't do that. I mean, when he lets the barrel go, you see him very often. If it's in the zone, now he'll get fooled on a slider. There's not a hitter in the history of the game that hadn't swung and missed. But I'm just talking about on, especially fastballs in the zone with 2 strikes. You don't see him swing through a lot of them ever. And Gallo, you saw that a lot. I mean, you could get that strikeout from Gallo, and it's a great comparison and power, just different styles of swing.
We need a break. When we come back, we'll talk some football with Keith Moreland as well as we continue with Light the Tower on the Horn, 104.9, 101.9, AM 1260, live, local, and digital on the Horn app and hornfm.com.
Talking about all these college football games. If you want the best football viewing experience, whether it's college football, pro football, maybe you like watching high school football on Thursdays or Fridays, whatever your favorite football format is, make sure you're watching it in the best way possible by getting in touch with Tom McKay and the folks at Audio Visual Consultations. Whatever you need on the home entertainment front, just let Tom and his crew take care of it. Call them right now, 512-255-8678. That's 255-8678. Whatever you need. What I love about AV Consultations is Tom McKay and his crew will put together a project that not only makes sense for your budget, it makes sense for the amount of space you have in your house. That's why I am so in love with my 75-inch LG TV and my Sonos sound system. So if you've got the amount of room, the amount of space to get that same setup like I've got, they can make that happen. Maybe you want something smaller. Maybe you need a gaming setup. Maybe you want 4 TVs in one spot. Tom's got experience doing all of that. If you go to any Pluckers, the Pluckers setups are all done by AV Consultations. And if you just want to blow it out and make your house the spot for football watching in your neighborhood or with your buddies this fall, get you one of those 150-inch screens, just a full tilt home theater experience. Tom McKay would love to make that dream become a reality. Just don't waste any more time. Get in touch with AV Consultations right now and get your appointment set up. 512-255-8678. That's 255-8678. Call right now and let Tom McKay and Audio Visual Consultations help you realize the home entertainment setup of your dreams.
This is Light the Tower on the Horn. Craig Way, Keith Moreland with you today. Jeff Howell will be back in tomorrow. Somebody on the Specs text line, let us know. We have a very intelligent group that attend. St. Catherine's would have been where the barbecue place was.
Yeah, it's right off the main drag. I mean, that's the main drag, St. Catherine's. I mean, beautiful cathedrals. It is I've got to tell a quick story. I signed professionally, got into professional ball, played a game in Reading, Pennsylvania, got on a bus, and drove 15 hours to Quebec City, Canada to play my next game. So that was in the Eastern League at the time. You had Quebec City, Thetford Mines,
yeah.
and Three Rivers.
Yeah.
In Canada, were the three teams.
Trois-Rivières.
Oh, my gosh. I mean, you spoke. I mean, it was all French. I mean, we'd go down to try to get ham and eggs in the morning. Where in the heck is ham and eggs? I can't look at that menu and figure out what it is.
Did you ever learn how to speak French? Or
no. You just then later on. I mean, obviously, the Expos were in the league, and when you got in the league, then in Montreal there was a lot more English-speaking people than Upper Ontario. And once you get above, I mean, Quebec City was very, very French. I mean, everything, the street signs. I mean, you could. It was amazing.
Well, the day that I saw you play in '86 in Montreal, the guys we were on this trip. We stopped in Montreal on that Sunday morning and went into what would basically be a CVS or a Walgreens. It was a drugstore. And we were trying to buy this. We'll show how long ago this was in '86. Blank cassette tapes, because we had a little bitty jam box thing with us, and we would record the broadcast of the games we were at. Sometimes because we ran a note up to the booth to say we're there. Harry Carey read it when we were in Chicago.
Oh, that's great.
There's a couple of guys here catching the games, and so we did this. And I go into the drugstore, and I walk up to the counter and I said, "Where do you keep your cassette tapes?" And he went, "Pardonnez-moi?" And I went, "Oh, wait a minute. All right, now wait a minute. I took 4 years of French, high school, 2 years ago. Let me think about this. Qu'est-ce que c'est cassette du magnétique? Oh, oui, blah, 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 blah. And I was like, wow, I pulled that one out of the rear end there.
Sure did.
So yeah, I did remember that. But anyway.
I can butcher the English language. Most of it.
All right, I have to get you to tell two baseball stories before we move to football. One, to retell it, is your very early professional debut in Winston-Salem, North Carolina, what you did that day when you played in the game and what you did after the game with your teammates that night.
Yeah, we came to Winston-Salem, played a game. At that time, that was the Boston Red Sox Western Carolina League High A representative. So we played in the game.
And you're playing for Spartanburg,
I'm
right?
playing for Spartanburg, South
Phillies.
Yeah.
At Ernie Shore Field in Winston-Salem.
Exactly right. You got Butch Hobson. There was a lot of awful good Boston players that later on went to Boston. On my team's Lonnie Smith. We had some good players on our team as well. And as soon as the game's over, a couple of the guys that were beside me, I'm fresh. You're the new kid that came into this. Even though I was 21 years old, played in college, and there were some guys younger than me actually.
How long had you been up?
A
week? 2 weeks?
I had signed. My first game was in Anderson. We went back to Spartanburg, played a 3-game set, and then we left on and a lot of times they did this, and people don't realize it. A lot of times they played Saturday through Wednesday, and then you went to another spot and played Thursday through Sunday.
Wow. So
the place is deal. So we were coming in for the first day in Winston-Salem was the night before. So I played the night before, played the game. And I watched all these guys ordering the clubhouse guys to go get them water, these big 1-gallon water jugs. And I'm saying, what are they doing? They're pouring the water out, and they're filling it for a beer. And he says, oh, man, you didn't know. We were told last week that we all have access into the concert next door and to take our own beer because we're going to be up with the Hells Angels. And I'm going, well, who's playing? ZZ Top. Steve Miller Band.
Didn't you say Marshall Tucker Band?
And Marshall Tucker.
And Leonard Skinner, wasn't it?
And Leonard Skinner.
Yeah.
Sounds like one of the concerts that you were selling T-shirts at back
Well,
at the Cotton Bowl.
here's the weird thing. I would have only been going on 15 at the time, so it predated my time. But I was living in the Piedmont Triad area. My two older brothers were at that concert that night. One of which told me the Hells Angels ended the life of one would-be knife wielding.
Oh yeah, there was
person.
all kinds of. We were in front. They slid in. We were with the other Red Sox players as well because the stadium, the baseball stadium, and the stadium were adjacent to each other. So we got to walk down into the back, and everybody said we got to go together. So you got these 40 guys for both teams carrying jugs of beer. Because, they wouldn't let you take any kind of glass or anything in. So you got a 1-gallon jug of hot beer. Of course, I'm not a big beer drinker. I'm not saying I don't partake in adult beverage, but it's not necessarily a beer. And so I got my jug of beer, and we walk around the corner, and I can hear, I'm just looking for some tush. Because ZZ Top wasn't even the closer then. I mean, they're in the middle. So as our game finished, we heard Steve Miller, and so Steve Miller finished, and then on our way over, there was no music, and all of a sudden it started, and the first song that ZZ played was I'm Just Looking for Some Tush. And so we're inside, walked in, the stage is like the outside wall of this building, and you're looking up, and they had the people playing up 12, 14 feet, and then you had off about 20, 25 feet, you had a row of Hells Angels.
Acting as security.
They were security. And we were in between the two, and the first couple of guys that walked in, here they came over, and then here come this one guy out and said, oh, no, these guys are all – we didn't have any kind of pass, but they wanted us all in. So we got to see the whole concert because we couldn't leave. The Hells Angels wouldn't let us out of that ring.
Once you're in, you're in.
Once you were in that ring, you were going to play to the end, and we were there till the end. Trust me, and they were breaking down the stairs before they let us out. I mean, breaking down the equipment at the end of it, but it was a heck of a concert.
All right, the other one is, I've got to get you to tell a story because a lot of people have asked about, everybody that's heard the locker room rant, Jim Fry, about 85% of the world's working.
No, that's Lee Ilia.
Lee Ilia. That's Lee Ilia. 85% of the world's working, and the rest of them come out here. That was precipitated by an incident involving you.
No doubt about it. At the time, you had the Walk of Shame in Chicago. Every Cub player's always heard about it because the locker room for Chicago Cubs in Wrigley Field was down the left field line. So when you got beat every day, you had to go back in. If you were the home team and you got out in the bottom of the ninth, you had to go back to the dugout, grab your hat, helmet, your flip glasses, whatever you had brought to the field, maybe your couple of bats if you wanted, and then you had to take this long walk down the left field line all the way to the deep left field corner because that's where the entrance was into the Cubs' home locker room. Well, I had just won a world championship, had not lost many games. I got traded to Chicago. It's in mid-May, and I think we lost our 7th in a row, and we had a 2-0 lead over the Dodgers. They come back, get us out. Well, I single to lead with 1 out in the 9th. Jody Davis is hitting behind me, hits a ground ball to short, 6-4-3 double play, ends the ball game. So I slid into second, and Wrigley at that time, before they changed the dirt, was this old, dark, really heavy black dirt. So your white uniform would go really, it would just be filthy. So I'm just seeing the Dodgers celebrate, and I'm walking off the field going, that's the 6th in a row we got beat or something. I'm pretty upset. So I get over to lean over the railing because at Wrigley there's a railing and a fence. It's different now. They've changed the dugouts a little bit, but I leaned over to get my hat. I was playing right field. My hat, my flip glasses, my glove. I didn't care about the bat, and I was going to turn and go down the field. Well, I looked up. This guy goes, "Hey, Moreland," and throws a whole 16-ounce
Heileman's old style
right in my face. I mean, just drenches me, and I just struck me wrong. So I'm over the fence, fixing to jump on top of the dugout. I'm suspension. I mean, there's no.
You went Ron Artest on him.
I was going, and Big Lee Smith, I love him to death, grabbed the back of my pants and my belt, and he just was a big, strong guy. He just yanks me back. He says, "Keith, I know you want to kick his," and I said, "Well, I will." And he said, "Not today," like that. And so he pulls me back, and I sort of gather myself, and I'm just drenched. And Lee's walking with me. Lee Smith is walking with me, and about 10 feet behind us, we hear our manager, Lee Ilya, and he is just tirade. I mean, language I have never heard before, and I thought it was at me. And I said, well, I didn't get suspended by the league, but I'm going to get fined by Lee. This is on me. So I go in straight to my locker, waiting
for the yellow shoe to drop.
Yeah, because usually everybody would come in, and then the manager would send somebody down to say the manager wants to see you. I had not been there, but I'd seen other people at that point. Well, nobody comes to get me, and then all of a sudden, all the other players said, "You hearing Lee?" And this tirade, which is one of the best in the history of the sport, and the way he culminates the middle part of it, you think it's to the end. He has gone off for about 2.5 minutes, and then he says, 15% of the world is
85% of the world is working.
Working.
And the other 15% of these bleeps come out to watch us or something.
Yeah. Don't get on my players. It's not our players' fault. And it was all about he had seen this beer coming on top of me. So
Cub fans, my bleeping bleep.
Yeah. Well, he knew he got fired that day. I mean, because Lee and I have had plenty of conversations since then. He said, I knew it was a matter of time. Now, they didn't fire him that night, but it was coming.
It was coming. Okay.
It was coming.
We got to wrap up. We'll be back to wrap up today's edition of Light the Tower on the Horn. Okay, we didn't have time to get to the football, but you know this, you'll be able to watch Keith, as analyst on Texas State telecast this year. You and Brant Freeman back, right?
Yeah, we'll do those. I brought my Texas football. This time of the year, you have it in your hand and run around. I mean, obviously, we get to cover so many things, Craig. And one of the things that I want to thank you and everybody about the Austin Radio Network was their coverage of high school football. You know how I feel about it.
Sure.
I got the opportunity to play in the big leagues. Always wanted to do it. I was blessed by that, by the good Lord. And when I got through, you guys helped train me. And I've broadcast big league games. You and I have done 6 national championship games, between 4 in baseball and 2 in football. I've gotten a great opportunity to do a lot of things, but high school football is still one of the most fun things. And I know why you still do it. Because people ask you, and they ask me, says, "Why you?" I said, "Look, it's still one of the most fun things to cover that I've ever covered."
No doubt. I'll see you around the corner. Thanks.
You got it.
Hey, a happy birthday to Dave Clark. Happy 75th birthday there. No, he's a longtime Longhorn fan. It's ZZ Top, his favorite band as well. So happy birthday, Mr. Clark. We'll be back. Cam, I'll see you around the bend.
Yeah, see you when I see you.
Yeah, absolutely. Happy Jack Farrell will be in the producer tomorrow. And Jeff Howell will join me back tomorrow. Until then, I'm Craig Way. Thanks for joining us. Stay tuned. Chad and Zay up next.